Welcome, my sweetings. Before we proceed, answer me my riddle.
What guards the precious with spiky array? Touch it with care, or price you shall pay. Beauty surrounds it, though pain it will bring. In gardens and forests, the warning does sting. Who approacheth destined death.
In today's video, I will be attempting to beat Elden Ring as a Thorn Sorcerer. And yes, I know that technically this class is called the Aberrant Heretic, but if you're anything like me, then you know what neither of those words mean. But you do know that the Aberrant Heretic exclusively uses Thorn Sorceries. Now, in the base game, there are only 2 Thorn Sorceries, both of which are straight up dog poop. But in Elden Ring's Convergence mod, you gain access to a variety of bigger and better spells, which makes this sorcery type a bit more viable. Well, actually, a lot more viable. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I like to call a metric buck-ton of damage. But now that you've pricked your tongue with the taste of Thorn Sorceries, let's jump straight into the run, shall we? As always, I have to give myself a theme-related name, and this time I really wanted to go with Thornopolis McGee, but unfortunately it couldn't fit, so I had to settle on Thornopolis Bob. Not my best, I'll admit. I then transformed myself into the Queen of Thorns, giving my character a deep crimson skin tone to really become one with the bleed build-up that Thorn Sorceries provide. Ready as I'll ever be, it's time to take a trip to the lands between, where I'm literally birthed by a crimson flower. Pretty awesome if you ask me. Now, if you're familiar with Convergence, you'll know that each class has a set path that guides them through the game. And this time it tells me that my first rune is located in the Forlorn Hound Everjail, which is quite a ways from me. So, how to get there? Well, by slaughtering this crystal crab, of course, who looks a lot scarier than he actually is. We take his teleporter to Limgrave, where I run straight to the Everjail, and battle it out with the Forlorn Knight. This fight is not too bad. Luckily, the additional bleed build that Briar-wrapped armament gives your weapon means that we do pretty good damage for such a low level. Of course, this means that I clean up the Bloodhound Knight with no problem, and give myself access to some new spell goodies. Close Wound was just a decent healing buff, but I didn't really use too much. Strangling Briars was a passive blood build-up debuff, which was super strong and which I would use to initiate most fights. Thorn Burst was theoretically good up against large bosses at close range, but felt pretty clunky, so I didn't really give it a chance. And then Briars of Punishment was the same as the base game, although I'm pretty sure they buffed its casting speed and range. For rune number 2, we gotta do a little bit of traveling, all the way to the Elthas Plateau, where I have to look up on the wiki where the unsightly catacombs is. This game really does have so many dungeons, my goodness. Anyway, we make it there without too much difficulty and quickly run through the dungeon to yank on this lever real good, which opens the door for us to enter the boss room. And my immediate thought when entering the arena was, uh-oh. A symbiotic duo battle where the perfumer buffs up the misbegotten, who is aggressive enough to protect her. Now, of course, the obvious strategy here would be to target the perfumer first to make sure she doesn't heal and buff the misbegotten, but after dying almost immediately on my first try, I got impatient and decided to retrace my steps and go pick up arguably the best item in the entire game. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, behold, in all its glory, the Buckler Parry. Oh yeah, 4 new dirty thorn sorceries, baby. First, Ritual of Desecration was a solid buff to your aberrant sorceries and also gave you FP and HP regen. Very solid indeed. Then, Red Glintstone Razor was a blood version of Carrion Slicer, which everybody already knows is stupid good. I mean, come on, Carrion Slicer but with blood loss, what's not to love? Then, Sadistic League was one of my personal favorites because it rewarded your melee aggression. It increased damage output, but more importantly, gave you the same ability that Melania has, where she heals off every successful hit. Oh yeah. And finally, the best for last, Telekinetic Shell. Quite possibly the most broken spell I've ever seen, and I really wish I was joking. It may not look like much, but my goodness was it strong. I sort of disregarded it at the beginning because its description was underwhelming, but you'll soon discover what it's all about. But for the meantime, we gotta keep building up our Thorn Sorcery arsenal, and our path tells us that our next rune could be located at the Shaded Castle. And of course, there's only one enemy there that would make sense to drop the rune. The big tanky, hard-hitting monster, Elema of the Briar. But before going through that inevitable pain, I decided to upgrade my starting weapon, and this time I went with a new thrusting sword called the Thorn of the Guilty, which was pretty underwhelming. But the reason I wanted it was because of that juicy 130 crit damage. Yummy. I also found out that straight after recording this gameplay, that the new Convergence update straight up buffed this weapon, which I was pretty sad about it, but it made sense because the Ash of War was kind of meh. It turns out they replaced the charged R2 with the previous Ash of War and then gave it a new Ash of War, which made sense because there was no reason to use the old one over a charged R2, which was just objectively better. But unfortunately, I haven't updated my game yet, so I don't really have any footage of the new one. Anyway, let's get back to the Shaded Castle, shall we? Too much to say about this place? I don't think much has changed in the Convergence, and we had a relatively easy run through to the end. Now, usually I would be nervous for Elema of the Briar, but as I'm sure you remember, we have the goddamn Buckler Parry, which is super strong against Barbarian Hunters, meaning this was gonna be a super easy fight. Yeah, okay, these guys are still super tough. At least a lot more than the Misbegottens. I was also very low leveled at this point, meaning I was getting one shot by a couple of his attacks. But after a couple more attempts, I got the dodge and parry timing down, and I'll let you witness the final product. Now, I'm sure at this point, some keyboard warriors are ready to start typing, the Buckler Parry isn't a Thorn Sorcery, blah 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 blah, yeah, whatever. I'm not a challenge runner, and I do these runs for fun, and can use whatever I want. Besides, the Buckler allows you to play a hyper-aggressive melee style, which comboed super nicely with the crit damage of the Thorn of the Guilty, and the melee buffs that some of those Thorn Sorceries give you, which allowed for a pretty satisfyingly unique playstyle. And with this playstyle, I took down my fellow Thorn Sorcerer, just to discover that he didn't even drop the rune. Nice. So I doubled back to explore a bit, and found the next rune in this random chest. Let's have a look at my new goodies, shall we? Firstly, Crimson Rose was that big AoE Thorn explosion that you saw in the intro, probably one of the most aesthetically pleasing spells out there, and was pretty strong as well. Bloodstar was a small toggleable buff giving you 5% more physical damage, and a handy little light bulb above your head. Then, Telekinetic Assault was probably the most disappointing of all. It was that long-range sword swing that Elema uses that hits you like a truck when he uses it on you. But when you use it, it has a weird hitbox where you have to be at a very precise range for it to hit properly, and it is often missed, and the only way to hit both swipes was to be right up close on top of them. There was absolutely no reason to use this over the Blood Carrion Slicer, so I barely touched it. Then, Red Glintstone Shards was decent, a nice shotgun that did high damage at close range, and was useful for large enemies. And then, finally, Eocade's Sap was just this giant fuck-off blood hammer that did pretty massive poise damage, but had a very slow wind-up. Now, although fighting Elema was not necessary for the rune, I definitely don't regret fighting him, as defeating him would allow us to purchase his armor from Enya later on, after we'd beaten our first Shardbearer. Incidentally, you'll never be able to guess which Shardbearer I beat first in this run. But before that juicy reveal, we've got to acquire the final Thorny rune. My path tells me that I get it after defeating a nameless white mask in Mogwin Palace, which is a bit of an odd one, but hey, it is what it is. To get there, I've got to beat 2 enemies in the consecrated snowfields in order to access the teleporter, which was a perfect time to showcase how incredibly broken Telekinetic Shell is. Yup, what even is that? It renders a majority of the enemies in Elden Ring completely useless because as long as you are near them, they are stun locked into oblivion for 20 seconds, and so long as you recast just before that time was up, they have absolutely no opportunity to fight back, which meant that the nameless White Mask got completely obliterated and stood no chance. Poor bloke. And finally, at long last, we can pop our final Radiant Rune of Thorns. Let's take a look, shall we? Firstly, Blood Comet was like a red glintstone razor in that it had a counterpart in the regular glintstone comet, but just added additional blood loss. Incredibly strong long-range option. Then, again, Crimson Greatblade was exactly like Adula's Moonblade and Carrion Greatsword, except with blood loss. Stupid good. And then the last 2 were the big boy buffs. Aberrant Ascension was the sorcery buff, which gave you a bunch of benefits, and Blood Revelry was basically a pocket Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman, as it gave you a massive damage boost whenever blood loss occurred in the vicinity. It also gave you HP, FP, and stamina regen. Kinda broken, yes, but it's for these broken builds that we play this mod in the first place. Now, remember when I said you'll never be able to guess which shard bearer I killed first? Well, if you know where I am, then you know exactly what I'm about to do. And you're probably thinking, no, surely not. Melania before Margit? How is that even possible? Well, firstly, there's a new teleporter behind the Godskin Apostle in the Windmill Village that takes you here, so getting to the Haligtree isn't a problem. And secondly, I was so confident in the build that I was sure I could do this even while underleveled. On the way to the big bad girl, I also discovered some cheese strategies you could accomplish with Telekinetic Shell. Lol. I love this spell. I was honestly more worried about Loretta than Melania, for reasons you'll soon find out, but she went down easy enough in the end. Strategy was to just play very passive and let Strangling Briars do its blood build-up thing, and go in for hits every now and then. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for Melania. Now, there's one reason and one reason only why I was sure we could do this. The goddamn buckler parry. Coming in clutch once again. Convergence Mon has made a couple changes to Melania. It now only takes 2 parries instead of 3 to drop her down, and considering most of her attacks are parryable if you get the timing right, this meant I was chaining these bad boys like nobody's business. Combo that with Sadistic Lee, which meant I was healing myself off every hit, giving Melania a taste of her own medicine, and I was in for an easy time. But perhaps the best part about the changes to Melania happens in 3, 2, 1, boom. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Waterfall Dance is now parryable and is probably up there with the most satisfying things I've ever done in my life. I would highly recommend giving it a go. But let's swap over to Live Me to see how much I was enjoying myself during this fight. Oh yes. Oh yes, this is it, baby. Oh my gosh, this is the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. Whew. I feel like this is bullying. This is bullying. Oh, shame. Oh, honey. Yep. I kind of feel bad for her. But after I think about all the pain she's caused me, should I really feel bad? I don't think so. This is very enjoyable, and only 2 parries is silly as well. It's just, you just keep getting the repose. Oh, I messed that one up. Okay, let's actually back up. And let's reapply everything. We'll do Sadistic Lee again. Okay, let's go back to the parry, and she should actually... Yep, she gets transitioned here. Okay, boom, boom. Another Briar. And then we'll just go back in with the parry. Oh, yes. Thank you. We will take that. Thank you very much. And then we'll just keep wailing on her. Boom. Boom. Thank you very much. I am thoroughly enjoying myself right now. Parry. Oh, almost messed it up there. Let's actually heal up here. Yep. Yep. Ooh, big bleed there as well. Yeah, we can get 2 hits off. Parry again. Okay, we'll hit him with another Strangling Briars. Do all our buffs. Make sure we switch back to the parry. Yep. It's just too easy, man. It's actually just too easy. Another successful parry. Oh, she gets bled before she can hit me there. And we'll dodge this. Boom. Parry. And this should finish her. Damn. And you all doubted me. You all doubted whether I could do this. That was beautiful. Completely unfair. I'm so low leveled. I'm level 65 and I just obliterated her. Yep, that was truly beautiful. Melania gives us a whopping 500,000 runes, which is enough to level up our intelligence and arcane enough to use some of our new spells and also to acquire some new drip from Enya. Of course, after already defeating Melania, Margit was going to be no problem, and it was a perfect time to test the Thorn Blade sorceries like Crimson Great Blade and Red Glintstone Razor. And as you can see, both of them were putting up tremendous numbers and felt pretty good to use, resulting in a swift blood-filled death for Margit. Godric was also just another test dummy, but this time for Blood Comet and for Telekinetic Assault. And this was the fight that I realized that Telekinetic Assault was just outclassed by Red Glintstone Razor in every single way. But I also discovered how strong Blood Comet was as a safe, reliable damage output source, which meant Godric was just another GGS.
The Lord of all that is golden and wonderful.
Wanting to continue my vein of testing out all the new spells, I barreled straight for Radahn because I wanted to test out Crimson Rose properly. Now, I'd already used it against the Nameless White Mask, but because he was such a small enemy, he could avoid most of the thorns. Radahn, on the other hand, is many things, but small is not one of them. This behemoth man gets absolutely clapped by Crimson Rose, as I'm pretty sure every single thorn is hitting him. Combo that with some nasty DPS from the Red Razor, and we make a fool out of Radahn. There seemed to be nothing stopping us at this point, so I headed straight to the capital without delay, where my first obstacle appeared in the form of Segura, the Knights Captain. For this fight, the strat was simple. Put on all the talismans and physics that buff crit damage, and then just backstab the shit out of him with my thorny sword. Despite being initially underwhelming, it was fights like these where the Thorn of the Guilty truly shined. God damn, now that is a lot of blood loss. Now, up until this point, I'd been enjoying Elimer's armor, but his gear was centered around melee builds, and we still needed some sorcerer drip. So we picked up Alberic, I don't know how to say this. We picked up his set above Segura's arena, after which we proceeded to Morgotius Maximus. I felt that switching to a long-range castable tier would be the most viable option because Morgoth has some truly nasty wombo combos that catch you out if you play too aggressive. Now, I'm reasonably comfortable with parrying Morgoth, but despite what you might think, I didn't want this video to end up being a parrying guide. Not yet at least. So we went back to the old reliable Blood Comet to choke him down. It was also at this point that I realized I really dislike playing sorcerer builds in Elden Ring, compared to the melee builds at least. For melee builds, it's a lot more centered around high risk, high reward, and it really gets my blood pumping, whereas spamming long range spells is kinda lame. Anyway, Morgoth gets cleaned up and I continue on my boss killing rampage by heading straight to Faramazula to take on Big Doggy Malekith. But before that, I want you all to witness just how powerful Telekinetic Shell can be for the open world. Now, anyone who's played this game knows just how dangerous this area is. Make one mistimed roll and you get swarmed by a flock of angry birds. I've died in this area more times than I can count. But with Telekinetic Shell, all of that fear and panic is just erased, because the birds literally can't touch you. I even went to go pick up this golden seed, which I literally never ever do at any playthrough because of how dangerous these bloody birds can be. Anyway, that was just a quick side note.
Thou who approacheth, destined to death.
Whew, that line goes so hard. This has got to be my favorite character in gaming history. I remember the chills I got the first time I did this fight. Those chills did fade somewhat after he mercilessly clapped my cheeks for around 2 hours straight, but after you've learned this fight, it becomes pretty easy. I actually find the Beast Clergyman to be the hardest part about this fight, because his wombo combos come out super quickly and are very hard to react to. So for the first phase, I played relatively safe and spammed Blood Comet and Strangling Briars. And then when we got to Malekith phase, I immediately swapped to the Red Glintstone Razor, because Malekith has way more openings and is actually much easier on a melee build than long-range sorceries, as a lot of his attacks are best dodged by rolling into him rather than away. With Malekith down, it's time for my least favorite fight in the game, the Stinky Poopy Fire Giant. Unlike my last run as the Frenzied Zealot, Fire Giant is not resistant to my attacks, and he just happens to be quite massive, which would mean that he gets completely shafted by Crimson Rose. Thank God. I really do hate this fight, but luckily, the sheer amount of bleed buildup this build provides makes it go by very quickly. Good night, my sweet child. Here we are, boys and girls. The final gauntlet of bosses approaches. Lo and behold, it turns out Scarred, the Crucible Betrayer, is parryable. But that does not make this fight easy at all. Quite the contrary. This was the first time I tried to parry him, and it was not forgiving at all. I actually ended up getting really frustrated during this fight, and had to go take a break just to calm down. That, my friends, is the sound of a man in pain. This fight is always hit or miss for me. I either bully him with some unique cheese strategy or get humiliated by him multiple times. Despite this frustration, I do feel like this is a much worthier boss than Gideon, who's quite pathetic. Slowly getting the parry timings down, I eventually managed to take down the Crucible Betrayer. GG, my friend. At this point, we are very near the end. If you've enjoyed the Thorny Sorcerer gameplay, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button, because I'm doing these runs every second week on my channel, and as per usual, for the last 3 bosses, I'm going to let the fights play out without any voiceovers in real time, so that you get more of a feel for the natural flow of combat. Until next time, my sweetings.
Is that it? No.
Ah, I survived. Interesting. Oh gosh. Whoa, that was close. Oh my gosh, she's so low. Ooh, that was close. Bitch. Ooh, that was clutch. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Bitch. Fuck you, motherfucker. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There we go, baby. Let's go. We did it, my friends. We completed Elden Ring as a thorny sorcerer. definitely one of my favorite builds in the Convergence mod so far. If you've made it this far, go outside, mate. But before that, make sure you check out all my other Convergence playthroughs. Until next time, guys.